All right, welcome everybody to another Tinker Tribe podcast. I'm your host, Greg Dowd, and today I had the pleasure of recently meeting Mr. James Patton at an event up in Tennessee, and got to learn about his farm where he's raising Meishan pigs. Magnum Opus Estates
Yep.
is his farm, and James, man, very grateful to have you on. Thank you so much for coming on to talk and have a conversation with me today.
Yeah, it was really great to meet you, Greg, and it's really great to be here today.
Excellent, man. So yeah, it was
First thing
really
first, though, can we just talk about how much of a bastard you are for making me follow Alan Booker? Because that was an amazing. You got an amazing get last time, and I am no Alan Booker. But I actually have been back in agriculture. I came up with it as a kid for a little bit, and I've been back at it for a couple few years now. Been working with Meishans, like I said, like you said, which is it used to be a critically endangered pig breed, but now we've gotten them back to being merely threatened. And I think they're the ultimate homestead hog. If folks are figuring out whether they want to actually watch this or not, and my background is in education. In between growing up and doing what I'm doing now, I spent 20 years as an education consultant in the private sector, doing everything for profit and nonprofit. And so I think while I'm no Alan Booker, I can maybe take some of the Alan Booker ideas and slice them and dice them and maybe make them a little bit more accessible for folks. That's sort of maybe my role, because it takes all types of folks to make a world.
yeah, man. And Alan is an incredible dude, and we're all about just like the self reliance aspect of things and how you can start to empower yourself with knowledge and raising your own animals, having your own food. That's a big part of it. So
Yeah,
what
absolutely.
got you interested in the Maishan pig specifically?
So my wife and I, we were moving from the suburbs to a more rural situation for her job. She's a doctor, and we were driving around doing the interview, and I was like, maybe we could get cows. And we're just walking around, driving around, seeing people. We see cows in the field. We think, oh, we could get cows. But her surgical partner already raises cows. And if you're thinking about, food reliability, or a concern, or if you're concerned at all about um, high quality food security. Um, Pigs just have better math in terms of how many babies they have, how fast they have them, et cetera, et cetera. And so we started thinking maybe we could raise pigs, even though I'd never raised hogs a day in my life before. I never did. I was Appaloosas and beef cattle when I was a kid on my granddad's ranch in Idaho. And So I knew there would be a big learning curve, but we started looking at heritage breeds, because if you're going to be homesteading, heritage breeds are usually better for a number of reasons, but most notably because they have immune systems.
Let me
Yeah,
stop you 1 second. What could you explain what a heritage breed is?
sure. So a heritage breed is something that, because we forget that, like, people lived for thousands of years. Um, all over the world. And when you lived in a place, you needed animals that worked in that place, or that worked for your sensibilities. So the Hampshire pigs are from Hampshire. The Yorkshires are the ones that are from Yorkshire. The Berkshires are the one that are from Berkshire. And the Meishan is from Meishan province, in China. And it's traditionally the pig that's from there. And the Meishans they're arguably the oldest pig breed in the world. They've been well
Yeah,
over
yeah. I saw something. It was like 5,000-year-old breed of
five
pig,
or
something like that.
six, depends on, like, it's like at that point it's like archaeology, man. And it's tough to say because, of course, we're talking about China, and the Communist Revolution. They burned a lot of books, so it's tough to say what's happening. Like the National Palace Museum in Taipei actually has a larger porcelain collection than the one in the Forbidden City. That's how much my nerd degree is in classics. Actually, that's what I did. That was a good springboard to education consulting, and so I'm a very much a remember, children, only you can prevent monastery fires kind of guy.
Yeah.
But so 5,000 years, 6,000 years, really old, man.
Yeah.
And for the entirety of that history, up until so they came over here in I want to say the 80s and 90s as part of a research program. And the reason why the professors were interested in them was because Meishan pigs, the thing they do better than any other pig out there is fertility. That's really the thing that is their sort of like claim to fame.
Yeah.
They have huge litters. And they like 22, 24 is the record now. I actually broke it last September.
Wow.
But it was kind of on accident, and I haven't publicized it much because I had to like get a bunch of genetic testing done to establish the pedigree, and it was not cognitively fluent, but I've got the genes, and I'll see what I can do to propagate them throughout the registry and throughout the breed association here soon. But there's stories of litters of one sow dropping a litter of 30 piglets in China.
Wow.
So it's somewhat apocryphal, but over here in the States, we've seen litter sizes in excess of 20. But more common is like 16, 18, 19. And, for a lot of other heritage breeds, that's a fertility rate that's just dunking on them. And if you've only got a little bit of land, a highly fertile pig makes a lot of sense and is very interesting because then that's less pressure on your land from pounds of production animal, and which leaves more room for pounds of product animal. If you've got one sow and a boar, or if you live close to me, I actually am the only guy in the country doing Meishan stud service right now because
Oh, wow.
yeah, artificial insemination's banned in the association, and that's because it's not because we're Luddites. We actually have several foundation animals' genomes gene banked. So anytime we want to clone one of those animals, whether that's Kai or Pink Lady or whomever, we can spend $8,000 and we can do that. And the reason why we would go that direction rather than just doing AI the way that everybody else is for convenience's sake is because one animal doing things old school doesn't exert so much pressure on where the genome is at compared to, say, like taking a boar's semen and FedExing it all over the country, where you could end up, there was this recessive gene and we didn't catch it, and now like a third of the genome has this recessive gene that we didn't want. So we're going kind of conservatively with it on that front, but it isn't because we're super backwards. We're not allergic to technology or anything like that. It's just that we understand the limits of it. This is a lot of what Alan was talking about last week. Is when you start to centrally plan things too much.
Yeah,
you start missing out on all sorts of intangibles, especially when you start talking about like. You're a systems guy yourself, like, complex systems, man, like, an immune system, like, forget about it. Like that's hugely complex. And so heritage breeds are ones that have not been bred for modern factory farming purposes. They were bred for a time and a place where we weren't doing gene editing and stuff.
okay.
So the research herds were brought over here by universities and the USDA. And they were looking to isolate the gene that drives the fertility, the hyperfertility.
I see.
Yeah, and so then it is in other. You can find it. It's difficult to find. It's not nearly as prevalent, but you can find copies of that gene. My understanding is, as I understand the science on it, you can find copies of that gene in like your standard pink Yorkshire porker. It just wasn't nearly as common as it was in the Meishan. And so they had these research herds it was University of Illinois, Iowa State, and then the USDA had 3 different research herds. And they bred the pigs randomly for like 20 years or so there. And then they had isolated the gene, and they were doing the genetic engineering for the commodity hogs. And I think they raised the average litter size in commodity pork in America by like 2.7 piglets or something like that. Which, when you start thinking about every single sow, that's like a lot more sausage at the end of the day, when you start talking about like on a national scale.
Right.
But so that was what they were about. They weren't really coming at it from like a livestock conservation angle or anything like that. They were like, dude, this fertility's off the chain. We should do it. And these days they will use the commodity guys or like the show pig people. Anytime you need like the cosmic power of P-Funk in porcine form, that's what they go. So all your heat check bores, your teaser bores, they will totally, they're the best because they're just roiling in pheromones. Meishan farmers down in Texas and Arkansas sometimes have significant wild pig problems because they will smell the Meishan from miles away.
Because they're so hyper fertile.
Dude, these are the sexiest pigs God ever let breathe. Right? That's that. So that's one of the reasons why I think they're a good homestead hog. Also, is they're lovers, not fighters. Now, I'm not going to say that it's still a 400-pound omnivore. You got to respect it. But they are remarkably docile. And that comes for 5,000 years, apart from that like 20 years or so that they were in the research herds. Other than that, their entire breed history has been being like backyard family hogs. And so homesteaders usually have like a couple kids running around, and so I have 0 violence-related pig problems on my farm. Now, what I lack in violence-related pig problems, I make up for in sex-related pig problems. So it is still a rated R farm movie. It's just a different kind. And but yeah, I'll have a sow go into heat and think it's completely reasonable to knock down 3 fences to get to the boar.
Wow.
It is a challenge at times, which is also one of the reasons why there's a market for the stud service, because then, I mean, if I sell somebody a gilt, they can raise her up, get her old enough to be, bred, and then she can come back to my place and we can get her bred and send her back in her second trimester. And I mean, you don't have to mess with the boar then. You don't even have to mess with the sex-related pig problems. All you have to support is 1 sow, and you can be saying grace on 15 piglets a year easily.
Wow.
Yeah.
So is it primarily the application of the Meishan for people to have on their little family farm, or is it like, are they being raised more commercially, I guess, or
the commercial guys interest in it? Yeah. So the commercial guys don't like it because their grow out time is too long. And so what the commodity guys are into, and like I'm gonna rip on them here. And this is why I got into growing my own pork.
Yeah.
But I do want to acknowledge that we haven't made the paradigm shift to get away from the old system. So I understand that there's some realism there. I think that the old school way of doing things, the distributed rather than centralized way of doing things with another hat tip to Alan Booker, I think that has more power than most people are aware is possible.
Absolutely.
I think regenerative ag is more practical. It's not just tilting at windmills. I think it's more doable than most people think. But currently, right now, we're dealing with some fairly centralized production of things. And if you want to take a pig and you want to pump it full of GMO corn and GMO soy, and in 6 months have something that you can legally sell as pork, the Meishan is not good for that.
Yeah.
You will not get I am not when I sell pork, and I am I'm like okay at raising pork. I'm like way better at breeding pigs. They're completely different skill sets. People told me like to pick one, but like the problem is when you're working with an endangered breed, you end up with pigs that you want to keep in the genome, and then you end up with pigs that you want to enroll in the meat program. So I kind of have to do both.
Right. You have to be very selective, right?
Yeah, and I'm better at the breeding pigs. So if people want to buy live pigs from me, go for it. Although my pork is delicious because I pay through the nose for fancy pig feed, and when you're aiming for the moon, you land among the stars. So can I do better with my pork production? Yes, I can, but it's still like I went down to see a gentleman in my house we refer to as Dr. Godfather, who was my roommate at Vandy. He's an ophthalmologist in Atlanta, and I was like, oh hey dude, do you wanna like eat some pork I've raised myself on my own land? And he was like, hell yeah, buddy. And so we just had Meishan pork chops that I'd grown, and he was like, oh my god, my friend, you're doing God's work. I go out to fancy steakhouses and I'll blow $750 on an aged this and that, and this is in that tier. And I was like, fantastic, dude. Because we didn't age or anything. It's just this is just my standard pork chop. I just took it right from the freezer. But so the pork quality is very good. Actually, can you go there? That is Meishan pork on the bottom there. That's a copper roast and I think a couple tenderloins there. And so you'll see that it's not the white/gray of the commodity pork that we got up there. And that does translate into flavor. And it is what that comes from is the fact that they do really well on pasture. Now,
okay.
Yeah. So this is another reason why they're a good homestead hog. You won't get the results out of them just shoving corn and soy into them. And that's for another reason that I'll just sidetrack into a little bit. Kind of nerdy, but this stuff sort of matters. What we've been doing with our pig breeding here for the commodity guys is they've been trying to get things leaner and leaner and leaner because the market for lard has not been very robust because we've had a lot of messaging throughout the sort of post-war boomer era consensus about saturated fat being really bad for you, and vegetable oil being super great. And then now recently we've realized, oh, wow, omega-6 ratios are important. And you've got like RFK and stuff, leading the crusade against seed oils. You've got Steak and Shake switching to tallow. And so lard, a lot more people are interested in lard.
Yeah, cooking with animal fat. Yeah,
cooking with animal fat, and I think there's a lot to be said for it. Now, that said, cooking with animal fat from animals that lived a good life for their species is very different than cooking with factory farmed animal fat.
Yeah.
And I think you wanted to ask me about my feed program, but I feel like I haven't stuck the landing on something. Let's get to feed and stuff and how you are what you eat and you are what your food eats. Also, let's get to that in a second. What I was trying to get at though was a lot of we had this, animal fat was bad, lard was bad, tallow was bad. This was the narrative for a long time, and so everybody was all fired for vegetable oil, which means soy, right? Like 9 times out of sometimes it's canola, which is also like super chemically processed and a bunch of other stuff. And so because of that, if you're a pig farmer, you've got all this lard, you can't shift it.
Right.
So what they did was they bred the pigs to be really, really, really lean. And so this sort of started to move to, this is where you sort of start to get to this division. And this tendency to a certain extent, there's some people that they really want lard, they really don't want lard. And so I think some heritage breeds are called bacon breeds versus lard breeds. Even the bacon breeds, if they're a heritage pig, they'll have more fat on them than a commodity hog will. But if you get these really, really lean pigs, the reason why they're a meat pig rather than a lard pig is because they've had one whole pathway for the generation of fat bred out of them.
Oh yeah, they're just spread specifically to produce the meat, the lean meat.
So pigs are like us. That's why a lot of medical research is done on pigs. They're monogastrimes. They only have one stomach. And just like us, they have two ways of storing fat. They have a thing called de novo lipogenesis. So de novo in the Latin, so de is from, novo is all new stuff, lipo is fats, genesis is beginnings, right? So we were making brand new fat from all new stuff, right?
Oh, okay.
And then that's one way. And that's where, oh my God, I ate so much potato chips or mashed potatoes, we'll say. I ate a bunch of mashed potatoes. I ate a bunch of, pasta. I ate a bunch of sugar, whatever. And I'm going to turn those carbs into fat. That's de novo lipogenesis. Okay. Reesterification is where you say, okay, I've had a bunch of soybean oil. I've had a bunch of corn oil, and I'm going to channel those lipids into my fat. And I'm just going to redirect something that started out as it. So when you have a bacon breed pig or a really lean meat breed pig, and they've got fat on it, the fat that you're getting there isn't actually de novo pig fat. It's repurposed corn oil or repurposed soy oil that the pig's body has just sort of like redirected into the fat stores. Now, why this is important is because traditionally, so let's say like a good example, like the famous Iberico pigs in Spain, right? And they've got the fancy Iberico ham where they're famously eating acorns, roaming over the mountains eating the acorns, right? Well, sometimes there's a lot of mountains in between acorns. So what the pig does is God and Darwin got together and did a high five and gave it leaf lard, and that lard tides the pig over in between feedings.
Oh yeah, between its ability to find more food. Yeah.
Right. So in a domesticated sense, a lard hog like the Meishan's a lard hog that happens to also give you delicious meat. Maybe not quite as much as some of the other breeds, but like I think the quality is amazing. And a lot of meat flavor comes from the fat, and the fat is really, really intensely delicious. And I think it's a part of it is also because so I go a little further, a little harder in the paint on this. The AMBA, American Meishan Breeders Association, head of research, which by the way, we have a head of research. So there's that. There's Jonathan Kemmerer. I'm a nerd farmer. This guy makes me look like a dunce. Like this guy is reading all the books, all the studies. He used to be in the wine country, wine industry. He's really hardcore. But he and I will fast our pigs throughout the week to.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So it's like and I'll fast myself. By the way, it's my wife and I do a thing called monk fasting. If folks are watching this on YouTube, just look up monk fasting to watch after this. Because it's a thing that humans, there's these monks, they live in Tibet. They've been doing this for thousands of years. They do a 36-hour fast once a week, every week, and they've been doing it forever, and they all live to be a bajillion years old. And do we really think that we evolved to have 100% food security every single day of our lives? No, we did not.
No.
And so these pigs didn't either. So it's not a saving. You don't save any money on feed. Let's get that out of the way. You still have to feed as many calories as you were feeding. But what it does do is it uses the pig's adipose tissue in the way that it was designed. And so what happens then is that because the metabolism is acclimated to it, if I fast my pigs for 24 hours before slaughter, they're not stressed by it. They don't have stress hormones or adrenaline or cortisol gunking up the meat because it's whatever. They've got all the lard. They're living off must be Tuesday, right? And then, but what that does is that actually means that they've got this fat, they've got this lard, but they've got to be able to burn it, which means they have to make it more bioavailable, which means they desaturate their fat. So what this leads to.
Interesting.
I should make a timeout here. Our evidence for this is not scientific yet. It is culinary. But that's not nothing. Like when you have Meishan lard, you will sometimes see in the jar that it separates. And you have a portion of the Meishan lard that is liquid at room temperature.
Oh, wow.
Which is a property of monounsaturated fats.
Oh, interesting.
So we're pretty sure what we've got some monounsaturated pig fat here that comes from de novo lipogenesis from whatever we're feeding our pigs. If I'm corn and soy free, well, then that means there's no corn and soy oil. Yeah. That means they're picking it up from the carbs or the proteins or their forages or these other things. And so, I've got some of it'll be reesterification for me because I also feed my pigs grass-fed raw milk. So that's also part of the like longer food chains and stuff that I know you want me to get to eventually, but I don't know. That's a lot to say. But the point is that because they've got these extra fat stores, one, you've got good fat to cook with in your homestead, but also that means that when you go to feed them, they're not going to attack you to get after the feed bucket.
Oh, okay.
A lot of times with these really lean hogs, if they miss a meal by even an hour or two,
they're ready to stage your diet.
They're ready to eat you, man. Okay. Like they're ready to eat you. And I can't handle that. That's one of the reasons why Granddad Roscoe never raised pigs, was because he knew that if he had a heart attack down at the bottom of the field, he'd be gone. Whereas if it's cows, well, when his wife came down and found him, he'd still be there with the cows. And so that was how he felt about it. That's why we didn't raise hogs in Idaho. Yeah, these Meishans, they're still 400-pound omnivores, but they're not trying to eat you. You know, they're not looking to do that. When the sow busts out of the pen to get to the boar, she is not taking a chunk out of your 6-year-old as she goes past. And for me, that is not a trivial detail. That's kind of a major selling point if I'm thinking about a homestead hog.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and we got into it really just because, just to bring it all the way back, how did we get into it? We started looking at different heritage breeds, and there was like, oh, hey, here's the Meishan, and they're, endangered, and they're all this. And we were like, oh my God, we cannot raise these pigs. They are so ugly. And if you folks should just look them up, or maybe you can edit in a picture of a Meishan at some point here. But they got these wrinkly, like Shar-Pei like faces, and they're just ugly as homemade sin. My wife, some people like the way they look. My wife explains it as they're Asian cute, just like Shar-Pei, right? Where they wrap around ugly onto the other side to become cute again. The babies especially, I think, are easier to make this case for. I've seen some cute pictures of Meishan babies. But I usually say, yeah, they're ugly on the outside, but they're beautiful on the inside. And yeah, we started off with, oh God, we can't possibly raise these pigs. They're too ugly. And then we just started looking at it more, and we're like, man, they're really good at being pigs. And so that
makes a lot of sense too, if you want some quality food for your family on the homestead.
Yep. Because if you're homesteading, you actually care about quality lard production. And if you can get baking lard and frying lard out of it, that's kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
If you've got leaf lard for your baking and back fat for your venison sausage, you're covering a lot of bases with one animal.
Right.
And it's just a great animal to have on the homestead, in a way that works really well. I'll roll into just rounding out like why I think Meishans are really good for homesteaders. They are good on pasture. They're very good on pasture. Some people say that the Koonie Coons are better. Some people say the Idaho pasture pigs are better. I don't know much about the Idaho pasture pigs. They're a newer breed. People love their Koonie Coons, and they say that they can just be raised entirely on grass. Maybe. I don't know. I don't have any particular axe to grind with the Koonie Coons, but I can tell you that I've been having an accelerating business in selling Meishans to former Koonie Coon people. And there's a few reasons for that. If I were going to, lay it out as far as I can understand, like what I'm hearing from people that are looking to switch. One, I can say that the fertility is not even close. Koonie Coon litters are smaller than average. Meishan litters are bigger than anybody else. And then the other thing is the carcass size and the carcass quality. It may be that your Koonie Coon can get to a slaughterable weight, but usually takes even longer than a Meishan. Meishan grow outs depends on what you want, right? But it's at least 11 months usually. Sometimes it's 13 or 14. Hanging weights are still kind of all over the page because it's an endangered breed. So we've got all these different genetic offshoots of bloodlines, and we're in the process of tidying that up. But we've got some breeders that are getting 300-pound hanging weights, which is very nice. That's a very nice, worth your trouble kind of hanging weight. The lower end, though, is not without utility, though, because if you are going to do things Amish style, just like at home, no processor involved. I can learn how to butcher a hog myself. I read that Robert Heinlein quote about like a human being should be able to con a ship, you know.
Oh, I love that. I love
specialization is for insects, right?
I love Heinlein.
On the list, baby. So
that's a great line.
And so if you're channeling that, right, you need a kitchen table hog. So you need something that is big enough, fast enough that it's not a problem, but that is, you don't need a crane to work with. And so I think Meishan is a good, nice, happy, medium-sized hog for that purpose.
Yeah, you get a pulley, tree limb or something.
Gin pole. There's like all these like old timer things that people would use. Yeah. So I mean, it's out there. There's ways. I mean, or some people just hey, I put my forks on my tractor, lift it up, there. That's done.
Right.
All I need is a good knife and a hose. That's all you really need to get things done old school.
Right.
But and then like it's nicer to have for some folks to have something easier to work with.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I would say when I've been looking for processors, how's it down in Alabama? Do you guys have a meat processor bottleneck? Because we up in Tennessee, that is the bottleneck. It's the regulations, and I tell everybody to write their legislator in Nashville and raise hell to try to get them to loosen up the regs. But is it bad in Alabama?
So my buddy raises sheep over here, and they use a local Amish processor.
Okay.
To do a lot of their stuff, and yeah, there are wait times.
Sure. So I've been looking around, looking for folks that can get things, with less wait times. People that'll even mess with pigs, because a lot of times the way they look at it, I could be cutting up a beef for you instead, and the thing that is their limiting reagent is that table time. And so if they're working with a larger animal and it's so many cents per pound, they just get more money out of working beef. So I've been driving all over finding places to process my hogs. But a common thread that I've seen is they'll tell me I have a minimum for running a hog. And the reason they have the minimum is universally they all have a horror story about Cooney Coons. And it's usually where somebody comes in, and sometimes it's they're slaughtering for themselves and they're feeding their family. Sometimes this is somebody they sold the pig to somebody else, and they come in and it's this much money for this much meat, and they're like, wait, this is the yield off the Cooney Coon? Like, yeah, and it took me 2 years to grow that. What? And they're not happy. They're not happy. And that's also because like when pigs get to be old enough, they start having what's called a plate, is what they call it, and it's like a callus on the side, basically to protect against being gored by other pigs, and that's the evolutionary purpose of it is. But that's a lot of metabolic load that's going into stuff that is never going to be good eats. It's not good lard. It's not good meat. It's just sort of tough armor. So when you have a pig that takes 2 years to grow out instead of 1, even if they're eating grass, man, there are reasons why that's suboptimal. And so if you get a bunch of hate mail from the Cooney Coon people, then I mean, hopefully it drives traffic for you, man. But I'm not out to tell anybody that they shouldn't love their Cooney Coons if they do. But I am telling you what I've heard and what I've seen. And a lot of what people are looking for, I think, from the Cooney Coons, the Meishan's doing it at least as well, if not better. In terms of, it's the docility is a push. The pasturing is maybe not as good, but it's in the same ballpark. And I don't know how they said the Cooney Coons do it, but the Meishan's, they got these long backs.
Yeah,
and that's where they put all the piglets, and it makes for more bacon. It makes for more pork chops. That's also a bonus, but it also makes for a longer digestive tract. So once they hit about 130 pounds, 140 pounds, their small intestine is long enough that they start doing hindgut fermentation like a horse. Now, they are not as good at it as a horse is, because a horse small intestine is, oh God, I forget what it was. 4-H was a long time ago, but it's like 40 yards or something. It's insane. A horse small intestine is really long. And what's happening is that's the thing that allows them to get away with not having 4 stomachs. They're able to still digest the roughage, the lignin and stuff from the grass. So the Meishan does have the ability to do that once it hits a certain weight. So I don't want folks to come away from this thinking like, oh, well, I'll just feed my pig grass and it'll be great. You don't want to do that. You don't want to do that at all.
Still an omnivore, right?
Still an omnivore. I leaned into that. We can maybe talk about that more later. We talk about like nutrient density and stuff, but, your best bang for your buck is going to be front loading the grain ration, hard, while they're still in the oven, honestly. In utero feeding of your pigs is a very good ratio of feed conversion. And you basically want to cram as much food into them as you can until they hit to be about 130, 140 pounds. And then then you can turn them on the pastures, and then they'll start really getting, I mean, you started beforehand just because you want them to have a good pig life, and they're still doing good things. They're interested in the grass. They're just not going to put on a lot of weight until they get that size, and they can start really doing the Meishan magic with that hindgut fermentation. And then you can reduce it down to, but I mean, like, then you're talking about 3 pounds of feed per day, plus forage or hay. Because, if you got a year grow out, you're feeding in the winter at least a little bit, right? So you do need to have hay, you do need to have forages, and so that is part of it. But you're also getting 15 piglets that grow to 300 pounds in a year,
right?
To like 1 steer, 2 steers. I mean, hell, if you want 2 steers, you kind of need 2 cows. If you don't want them to blow out their uterus, you need to go back and forth and give them years off. So now you got 4 cows if you want 2 steers a year. You see what I'm saying? So, whereas like with pigs, it's much faster.
And you need less area for them, right?
Depends on it. Depends on what you want, right? How fast are you rotationally grazing them? Meishans are easier on pastures than other pigs. I'll put it that way. People will tell you that they don't root. I don't think that that's honest. I think all pigs root unless you ring them. I don't hold with that personally, because I don't think that that's natural. I think they do need to beat up my pasture a little bit. I think that that's good for the pasture in the long run. But they are shallow. They're more shallow rooters, and they don't just automatically turn everything into the craters of the moon immediately. They will if you give them time. They will. They'll be like, well, I'm going to look for stuff to eat in here, and the top stuff is gone, so I'm going to dig to China. And they will if you leave them in a spot for too long, they will kill it. But if you keep them moving, or you have few enough of them on a big enough space, they'll mostly dig themselves a wallow, and other than that, they'll go around and look for like tender yummies somewhere else. So that they're easier on your land than other pigs are as well.
So rotating them, like, how long do they stay in one area before they get shifted into the next area?
So I am not the foremost expert. Just like I'm not Alan Booker, I'm no Joel Salatin or Greg Judy either. Okay, so I don't want to pretend that. But one of my understanding of what you're looking for here is you want to leave them there. And if you have both pigs and cows, and I hope to have more cows, I hope to have my own dairy cows someday. I'm just adding another species to your situation is like,
yeah, you really got to take
variables. You're compounding your complexity more. It's better in the final analysis, but one does not simply, right? The reason why I want the cows is so I have my own milk, instead of having to barter for it with an Amish gal down the road from me. She still makes her own butter. She still makes her own cheese and stuff. And so I get all of her whey, her buttermilk, and her skim milk and stuff. I've got a good situation. She buys my pork and loves it. That's awesome. But if you do have both, like if you have cows and you're thinking, okay, James, you're making a good point. Cows just don't make bacon. Um, you know, they just don't make ham, you know, sorry, don't get a Boston butt off a cow, you know. So, and you most especially don't get leaf lard off of a cow, monounsaturated or not. So if you're thinking, hey, you know, these, I never thought I wanted to raise pigs because I thought they would eat my children, but hey, if there's pigs that don't, suddenly I'm interested. You would put the cows in first because they're going to be a little bit more picky, and they're going to be easier on the land. And then after that, you rotate the cows out, and then you put the pigs in next. Now, generally, and if you're doing two different species like that, you're going to have to mess with your own land and figure it out. But the rule of thumb on when to move stock off is you want to move them off when 1/3 of the forages have been eaten, 1/3 have been trampled, and 1/3 is still standing.
Okay.
That's your rule of thumb. And usually this is like no more than like 4 days. If you have decent stocking density,
Yeah.
such that you're trying to like, because a lot of times if you're rotationally grazing, what you're getting out of that is you're getting the active management allows you to raise more animals in a smaller amount of space. And then there's some other benefits in terms of like interrupting parasite life cycles.
Yeah.
So if you have good rotations on enough area, by the time the pigs come back around, if they've had worms or eggs or whatever, they're gone. And then they don't have the parasites don't have a host, and then you stop having parasites on your land. So that's a cool benefit of rotational grazing. And this is also, we're mimicking a natural thing. Like in when you had the buffalo over, you know, everything from, you know, Oklahoma up to Manitoba, you would end up, they would move, right? And like famously the Sioux would follow them around. It was a big thing. They were on walkabout, man. So what you're doing with your rotational grazing on your homestead is you're just miniaturizing that walkabout aspect, and you're getting some of the natural cycles artificially, but you're mimicking it intelligently. So yeah, 4 days, a third, something like that. I will say that if you are thinking about raising pigs on a cow pasture, you're going to want to diversify what you've sown in the pasture, because an optimized pig pasture is going to be different than a cow pasture. You want to start looking into like obscure brassicas and things that are higher in protein. I've said the words dwarf Essex rape way too many times in the last year. It's been an experience, but like, it's really good for hogs because it's much lower in lignin and higher in protein. And so, what you would do is you would rotate them off, and then honestly, you would probably just mow. Even though you left like a third standing, you'd probably mow it afterwards, which is going to like chop up and mulch around your pig manure and stuff. But more importantly, what that does is it sets everything back at the same level. And then when that forage starts coming up, you want to be able to rotate pigs back onto it by the time it's about like 6 inches high, because younger forages are higher in protein. And so again, we're trying to build pork, right? And we want them to have it be readily bioavailable. And they only have the one stomach, right? There's stuff you can do, right? We've got a Meishan small intestine, so that's cool on the back end. On the front end, you can ferment your grain. And be a sort of like a bootleg, you know, quasi faux rumen that sort of pre-digests it. Fermenting feed is a really easy thing that's very low tech. That people get intimidated by it, but it's really nothing. All you need is like water and 24 hours. If you're concerned about fermenting yeast instead of lactobacteria, which I was, because yeast fermentation it gives off too much gas, and it happens all the time in commodity places. Commodity pork, like they'll ferment, the slop will ferment, and it's going so fast it'll actually ferment inside the pig. They'll bust a gut and die, and they just like grab them and pull them off to the side, and it's considered an acceptable cost of doing business.
Oh wow.
Yeah, which is not how I want to farm.
Right.
You know, if you're concerned about that's coming from yeast fermentation. If you want to make sure it's lactobacteria, I just go down to Costco and I grab like raw organic sauerkraut and I like take like a little handful and chuck it in the bucket the first time I do it with my clean buckets. And then after you just don't ever wash the buckets. And that fermentation mother in there. And you just, you got 2 sets of buckets. You got one for your morning feeding, one for your night. And you slop your hogs. And then right after you're done slopping in the morning, you come and you fill them back up and put water in it. And it's good to go. And 24 hours later, there's your breakfast. And so it's not really a lot of extra work, and the cost savings that you're getting for the extra tedium of just filling the buckets with water is significant because one, the feed plumps up so that the pigs feel full faster, they get more satiation, which is better because that's useful because that means that they end up having less fighting at the trough amongst each other, and you get more of you're able to feed the whole herd, and then what they're getting is also it's been pre-digested by the lactobacteria, so it's more bioavailable, and they're getting more bang for the buck out of it that way. And your pigs they love it. You can tell that they love fermented feed better than non. So that's another little homesteader hack. Anyway, I've been all over the place. You have great questions for me, and you've asked me one.
You've actually covered a lot of them while you're.
Yeah, sure. Well, yeah. What do you want to go? What do you want to go next, man?
But since we were talking about the fermenting of the feed, maybe you can explain, why you want to select like your feed selection and why that's important.
So we have a graphic for this, actually. This is about you are what you eat. So this is about the how food chains work. Boom. Look at you. So slick. So this is what you'll see in most of your like freshman biology textbooks, kind of a thing in high school. And they always talk about it with like DDT. And is the classic thing. Sometimes you'll also see it with tuna. Like pregnant ladies aren't supposed to eat tuna because they're like at the top of the food chain. They're a big predator fish
because of the accumulation of mercury in
that
environment.
Yes, exactly. And if you go hunting out west in like, so I did some hunting in Diet, Idaho, or as I like to lovingly refer to Eastern Washington.
Idaho.
Dude, it is. So you go over, you're in Seattle, and it's like temperate rainforest, and like you're on the Olympic Peninsula with like Roosevelt elk and like all this stuff, and then like, dude, you go over the mountains driving east, you go through Snoqualmie Pass, you come down on the other side. It is Diet Idaho, man. It is like sagebrush and it's just another bloody state, man. But so because of that, though, they're worried about you have to hunt if you're gonna hunt duck or upland game birds or whatever. I was doing ducks and geese. I helped a future Washington State game warden get into college for his environmental science degree because that's what it takes, and hilarious. He was up and taking all of his environmental science classes with all the hippie chicks. And he's there as the baby game warden, and it was highly amusing. But anyway, so we're out there hunting ducks and geese and stuff, and you got to hunt with steel shot. And there's the reason for that is because the sage grouse will eat the little shot pellets, thinking that they are pebbles for its gizzard to grind the food.
Oh, okay.
So sage grouse will carry around these lead pellets in their gizzard mad long until they basically grind them away. And while they're doing this, they're absorbing lead.
Yeah.
Now, interestingly enough, this is not enough lead to really mess with the sage grouse. But the eagles that predate on the sage grouse are just as boned as the eagle in this graphic here, eating all of the concentrated DDT.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you have a contaminant in the water like the DDT, it's like whatever they've got, like, 3 nanograms per liter down there at the bottom. And then the plankton eat it, and then the small fish will eat the plankton, and then the large fish will eat the DDT, it will eat the smaller fish. And what's happening is they call it a trophic layer. At every layer of, like, predator and prey, the predator is outsourcing the eating of DDT or lead or mercury to all of its prey species. Mm-hmm. So if you've got an eagle and the eagle eats, 20 sage grouse, it has as much lead as a sage grouse can expose itself to in its lifespan times 20.
Right. Wow.
So a lot of people are very clear that this is how this works for bad stuff, but they don't seem to put it together that this principle could also be applied to good stuff. So let's talk about something that most of us, like a nutrient that most of us are deficient in our horrible, American diets. Let's talk about, like, vitamin K, right? Where are you going to get vitamin K from? Well, if you ask your doctor's going to say green leafy vegetables. And yes, there is vitamin K in green leafy vegetables. However, do you know how many green leafy vegetables you have to eat in order to get enough vitamin K?
Probably a ton, yeah.
A truckload. Or you could outsource the eating of the vitamin K, the eating of the green leafy vegetables, to a cow. Which, again, we got one of those God and Darwin doing a high five things. They got 4 stomachs. They're really good at it. Cows are way better at eating green leafy vegetables than you will ever be. And I don't care how hard you try. They will be better at it.
Yep, you're right.
And now there are some caveats with this, right? You don't just go out to go eat, like, ribeyes all day and get enough vitamin K. A lot of vitamin K is in the liver. So if you really want, grass-fed beef liver is actually, my understanding is that grass-fed beef liver is the only nutritionally complete food for humans on the planet. Now, maybe they haven't done studies on my Meishan liver, but it's entirely possible. So one caveat for that is you do need to be eating nose to tail. And this is why I mix organ meats in with my sausage. Sometimes I'll have they'll call it ancestral blend or various things. You can make heart, liver, kidney, spleen, whatever in with the sausage.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then that way you're eating nose to tail, and you're getting some of these micronutrients that get concentrated in the liver and in the heart or whatever. And so some people say, like, oh man, isn't the liver like isn't it the filter, the trash filter organ, or and yes, it is. That's why I don't want to eat, animals that didn't live a good life for their species.
Exactly.
The other caveat is that if you want to be getting vitamin K from a cow liver, or even if you're going to try a pig liver or a goose liver actually is known to have a lot of vitamin K, because geese will eat. Geese actually can live entirely on grass, is my understanding. I think you'd have to double check. What was that? Oh gosh, what's that guy? What's his name? He's the Duck Chronicles guy. Look up the Duck Chronicles on YouTube if you're at all interested in this stuff. That guy's he's a character, and highly entertaining. But he's like, he raises geese because they get more balance to the ounce out of grass compared to his ducks.
Okay.
So goose liver has a lot of vitamin K, but again, like, if you're going to be eating beef liver or goose liver or whatever to get vitamin K, because you're going to outsource the eating of the green leafy vegetables to the animal to do it for you, well, they do need to actually be eating grass. And if you're just dealing with a lot of feedlot stuff and they're all in concrete and they never see the sun, and
they're never getting the grass.
Yeah, then my misguided vegan hippie friends in Seattle are right about that one. They're wrong about a lot, but they're right about that one. All the reasons why they don't want to eat the meat is the reasons why I'm growing it for myself. So we have more in common than they realize, I think.
Yeah.
But at any rate, so what your food eats matters.
Yeah, it's coming into you.
Yeah. And so this is another reason, if you've got folks that are homestead and they've got, they're sold on the idea of the family cow. And if I'm trying to sell them on the idea of the family pig, it's like, well, pigs are omnivores. So what that means is that they can extend the food chain further because they are designed to eat animal products as well, and cows aren't. And so that could be, now the commodity guys are using the fact that pigs are omnivores. They'll eat literally everything, right? They're using that to get away with feeding the pigs like literal garbage. And if people look around, you can find the guy on TikTok who like blew up the viral videos where they're just given the food waste and they don't take it out of the plastic wrapping because, the labor on that is intense. I've messed with that some where you'd have like food banks at the church, local church, and be like, oh, well, you're a pig farmer here. You should take some of this. And I'll go over and I'm like, I don't know how to tell you this, but like, one, the labor of unwrapping all of this is insane. And then on one time I went over and looked at it and I was like, this has entirely too much sodium in it. It'll kill my pigs. Because a lot of it's really should like we should stop and think about like, okay, we're eating so much sodium that it'll kill pigs in our normal processed food diet. But so that it's actually been a hard thing for me because I'm like, man, this food bank is giving, food for homeless people. And I don't even want to feed it to my pigs. And it's sort of, it's this thing that just sort of is it's one of those make you stop and think moments where it's like, what are we doing with our food supply?
Right.
And they have found studies now that there's microplastics in most commodity pork. They are finding microplastics in the pork. It's one of the reasons why a lot of people won't eat pork. I've encountered more than a couple people, not a lot, but more than a couple people who, you met one at the event, and she said doesn't eat pork, but she tried mine. Kyle Birchfield is a butcher in Murfreesboro, Tennessee at Tea and Meat Co. And he basically hasn't eaten pork. He's a butcher and he doesn't really eat pork. But he eats mine and he's thrilled that he gets to, because he's like, I like pork. It's delicious. I couldn't, being close enough to where it was coming from and everything. He's like, he just wasn't sold on it.
Yeah, I didn't know. Yeah, I didn't realize that. Yeah.
So, yeah, and the thing is that like all the reasons why people won't eat pork, it's the same reason why it's a sword that cuts two ways. You can have that fact where you can be concentrating bad stuff up the food chain, or you can use those same powers that are magnified more than you would get with a cow, and you can use that magnification power to concentrate good stuff into the food. And if instead of microplastics, what you're putting into your kids is vitamin K, vitamin D, bioavailable selenium, bioavailable chromium, things like that. That's all really good stuff for nutrition as well. So actually that's actually a good segue to another, let's maybe talk about let's look at the soil.
Yeah.
Soil thing. And I know you wanted to ask me about what healthy soils look like.
Yeah.
So this is the picture that's worth 1,000 words. And that is, I think he's a National Geographic photographer or whatever. I've seen this photo kicking around on the internet a fair bit. But what we've got there on the left is the root structure of like, I think healthy like prairie grasses. And then when we have on the right there, you see the tilled agricultural stuff. I didn't realize what was going on with any of this until I started farming as an adult. So when you're a kid and you're in, fourth grade and you're learning about how like photosynthesis works, that actually it's not bad. Like it's actually a pretty decent handle for your average citizen to understand. The plant takes in water from the roots and it takes in carbon dioxide from the air and sunlight, and it uses the power of the sun and the magic of chlorophyll to make its own food, right? With the carbon from the carbon dioxide and the hydrogens and the oxygen. Well, hey, there's carbohydrates right there. Boom. We just made sugars. That's awesome. And we can put it into chains and make a potato, make a sweet potato, things like that. I didn't know, though, about how the minerals go. Sometimes they'll say that they get minerals from the soil. Okay. But once you start learning about mineral supplementation at all, if you're like working out or anything like that, you start realizing like not all forms of mineral supplements are created equal. Like a bunch of them are just ground up rocks. And if you take, like say you want to supplement with magnesium, right? If you've got an organic form of magnesium, which, I mean, that could be magnesium malate or citrate or threonate, or that's the fancy one, it's going to have a carbon in it. Just Google it, look it up on Wikipedia. If there's a C in the chemical formula anywhere, congratulations, you got yourself an organic form of magnesium. And that organic form of magnesium is going to be far, far more bioavailable and more readily absorbable than just, magnesium oxide or whatever. And so those bioavailable minerals, well, they got to come from somewhere. And I did not know that where they come from is the soil microbiome. So yeah, soil microbiome is this is one of the biggest environmental crises that nobody's talking about. And they really should. The second one is how few kids are going into hunting and fishing. And it's for these reasons that Alan was talking about how distributed systems are just superior to centrally planned systems. And because you can't replicate in a top-down fashion, let's say you're worried about maintaining game habitats or ecosystems, because actually fish and wildlife people, they spend 80% of their money on just random conservation stuff that is nothing to do directly with game species. And the reason they do that is because they know that they have to have the whole ecosystem for it to all hold together. And it's $10 billion a year for conservation. Comes from hunters and fishers and stuff like that. It's billions with a B. And it's aircraft carrier money. It's 100 times the budget of the Sierra Club every year for conservation.
Wow.
And so the thing is, even if you could find $10 billion lying around, which we're not talking about millions, we're talking about billions. This is different, wildly different, right? You're not going to be able to replace, even if you replace the money, you can't replace the boots on the land and the eyes just the eyeballs looking around.
Yeah.
And so that's that's the other crisis, is how few kids are going into hunting and fishing. But the other big crisis that I've found out about is soil microbiome, because then you have a bunch of organisms, trillions of organisms that are doing good things in their evolutionary niche for the ecosystem. What are those good things? All right. So if you have the right mix of little beasties in the soil, they will secrete enzymes that digest the bloody rocks, and they'll get selenium, chromium, boron, anything that your Crunchy Mom group on Telegram or whatever is going hard in the paint for. There's little beasties, bacteria and fungi, that will digest the rocks and make it bioavailable. Okay. So you don't need to go out and make yourself a borax colada. All you need to do is eat food that came from an actual ecosystem.
Make sure that you're supporting that biological life in the soil.
Yeah. So when you do that, then those bacteria and fungi, so first of all, what do they live off of? Where does the energy come from? And the energy comes from plants. Okay. That's that root system. That's why those roots go all the way down. What they're doing, and this is the thing I didn't understand, with my fourth grade understanding of photosynthesis and how that happens. Roots are a two-way street. And so the plant makes food, but then it distributes the food out through its root system in its exudates. The exudates are the things that are exuded, that it ooze out of the roots. And what are in the root exudates? Well, there's proteins and there's carbohydrates and there's all sorts of what is that? Well, it's food, right? And the plant will actually tailor the nutritional content of the root exudates to stimulate the development of a soil microbiome that'll give it what it needs. So if it needs more selenium, it's going to make a Brazil nut tree or whatever, right? The Brazil nut tree feeds microbiome that digests, dissolves, and liberates selenium from the rocks. Then those bacteria and those fungi that got fed by the root system, they get eaten by their trophic layer, by their predators, which are nematodes and microarthropods and other little creepy crawlies that are just a little bit big enough that a bacterium looks like a nice snack for them, right? Or a fungal hyphae looks like a good snack for them.
Yeah.
What that microarthropod or nematode poops out, that's bioavailable selenium, and the plants get that. So it's wild because the plants are their own farmers where they're farming the microbiome.
Yeah.
And they're tailoring, and the plants are to say they're making decisions is a bit like much, unless you want to get very hippie and new age with it in a very sort of like circle of life kind of way. But what they're doing is they are in fact reacting, and they have these tropisms where they feed different bacteria and different fungi
to get what they need, right?
Get what they need. But what they need doesn't even come directly from them. It comes from another completely other organism, a third party in the ecosystem. It's the bacterial and fungi predators that are actually being fed, that produce what the waste that is the bioavailable selenium, the chromium, the boron, whatever the plant needs. And then that's what the plant absorbs.
The similar bioaccumulation concept that you just
absolutely
talked
right
about.
And so when you extend that further, right, so if I've got cows, right, if I've got an ecosystem where I've got and an important part here is that those root systems don't get that deep without being grazed. That is the thing that makes it happen, right? And so this is where my understanding is that studies on this that prove me right have like dropped very recently. Like since the last time we talked, in between those times I made those claims when I gave a presentation at the event, and I believe I became aware of studies that said that I'm right in that intervening time. And that there's this other variable that we don't talk about, which is how much carbon is sequestered by these root systems. Because when you have living soil where it's roots and it's fungus and it's soil and it's bacteria and it's all of the microarthropods and the nematodes and all of that together, when you take like a cubic meter of that and you do your science on it and you mass spectrometry and all the stuff, you find out that 50% of the mass in that cubic meter was alive. And life on this planet means carbon. So what that means is that when I have a root system that goes down 14 feet because it's an actively grazed pasture or prairie or, Kansas and where the buffalo roam, right? That root system is how the plants grab carbon out of the atmosphere and sequester it 14 feet down. And so like the problem with this is that when you start talking to the central planner guys that Alan was sort of like saying, it wasn't even like he was bitching about them. He was just like, well, they've already lost. They just don't know it yet. It's clearly gonna fail. It's black swans for days. It's never gonna work. But like you'll talk like a Bill Gates guy or whatever. It's like, well, what we're gonna do is we're gonna grow a bunch of bamboo, or we're gonna grow a bunch of switchgrass, or something with like a shallow root system, and it has like all the carbon goes really fast growing. So we have all the carbon right here above the ground, and then we're gonna dig a hole with bulldozers that burn. And then we're gonna burn it, and an oxygen port might make biochar, and then we bury the biochar, and it's like, or you could just grow grass.
Or just let the grass do it,
and then have the grass be grazed by the animals that are there to eat the grass. And all of the carbon that they eat and make methane out of or whatever that they put back into the well, that was all carbon that came from the atmosphere. And you're not accounting for the carbon that came from the atmosphere that the plant sequestered to feed a whole ecosystem under the ground that you're not even aware of, that spends its entire life underground sequestered.
And also giving you more water retention on the land so that you're not getting flooding happening, preventing erosion, tons of other benefits.
And making eating nutritious food a lot simpler than it normally is for most vegans. Okay. Like, I'm not saying you can't be vegan if you don't want to. It's just, some people can't. It looks like there's some evidence. I would say there's at least some compelling arguments that not everybody can. I've heard from some people that have like really struggled with this. And I mean, I've got compassion for people having struggles, and I'm a farmer because I don't like the factory food. I get it. Like, I'm coming to different conclusions than these people, but and I would love to sit down and have a beer with them and cuss and discuss. But yeah, the ability that I've got by raising something that's better than grass-fed pork, because I'm feeding it raw milk, where the nutrients don't just come from the grass, they come from the grass that my friends' cows eat, and that they concentrate in their milk. And then it's like vitamin K is only, that's not the half of it, right? That's just only one thing, right? Milk is astonishing. Mammals are very highly evolved for reasons. Humans are mammals for reasons. If you look into, I mean, the human breast milk data is staggering. It's to the point where my wife and I, when we had our kid, we started learning about breastfeeding and stuff. We were like, okay, the prefrontal cortex might not be the most highly evolved organ on the planet. It might be boobs. Boobs might be a more highly evolved organ. Like if you have twins and they're different temperatures, you can put one on one boob and one on the other, and the breast will independently regulate the baby's temperatures.
Yeah, and there's like immunities that are shared.
Yeah, stem cells. Oh, dude, what was it? Oh God. Oh God. Right. This blew my mind. Lactobacillus reuteri. It's a gut biome bug. Okay. And what'll happen is when a woman gets pregnant, her gut will absorb Lactobacillus reuteri through the intestine and put it in the bloodstream and transport another foreign organism through the bloodstream to the boobs to put into the breast milk to start off the baby's gut microbiome on the right foot.
Fascinating. Yeah, that's fascinating.
Science fiction level stuff, man. Like, this is insane, right? So I don't know everything that cows are doing. And yeah, sure, it's more optimal for cows than it is for us. But like, if it's to the point where like mammary glands are modulating the baby's microbiome, like this is a level of complex systems. Again, back to Alan Booker, we love him so much. This is like insane, and we found this out like very recently, right? Like a lot of this stuff, like don't know where a lot of this is, right? Like you want to talk about soil microbiome, you can talk to the best scientists we have, and the best ones that we have will say, yeah, here there be dragons. That's what it says on the map. Okay. We don't know. Our best scientists do not know all of the species of bacteria and fungi, but the plants apparently do. And that's a very humbling thing to think about, I think. And that is, I think, a lot of what Alan was talking about, where we should be approaching our relationship with the world with a lot more humility.
Absolutely.
And so when I feed my pigs milk, what I'm doing is I'm respecting that process. And then when I feed them fish meal, because I do that as well, I've got 3% fish meal in my pig feed. And some people say, "Oh, doesn't that make it taste fishy?" It's like, not at 3%, man. Like also like I don't know. You eat fish. Do you always smell fishy immediately after? No, you don't. Like maybe if you work as a fisherman, but that's really a different thing, right? Well, that's not the same thing at all. But yeah, then what I'm doing is I'm not only taking a soil microbiome. Now I'm talking about a marine microbiome.
Yeah.
I'm talking about phytoplankton. I'm talking about spirulina. I'm talking about algae and what they can get and what they can get out of an ecosystem. And that gets concentrated up until finally we get into, I think it's herring that end up going into the fish meal that feeds my pigs.
Oh, okay. I didn't understand that concept, but now I understand it better.
Yeah. So there's that. And a lot of this stuff that by definition, I'm saying I don't know all of what's going on there. Right. But a lot of it, what I do know is that that's more omega-3s, right?
Yeah.
That's bolstering my omega-3s. I've already got no corn and no soy. And my pig feed is, it's all organic. It's from Kentucky Organic Farm and Feed. They're great to work with if you're within striking distance of them. But it's organic, barley, peas, wheat, sunflower meal, swine mineral, and kelp. And so I've kelp in my pig's diet as well. And what this is doing is usually we're looking for a micronutrient there or whatever. And there's, very like 3rd-degree black belt vets that help with this. But I'm looking at it as like the regenerative ag guy, and I'm like, yeah, I'm getting selenium or whatever, but I'm surely getting all this other great stuff as well. And so this is part of like why whole foods are better to eat, and why it's just a better way to live in a lot of ways. And you're getting very nutrient dense food. Because if you're going to be eating bacon, if you're going to be eating pork chops or whatever, yeah, you're not supposed to be eating a ton of it. So the stuff that you're eating, you might as well have it be really good and round a lot of bases. And I think if our approach to our animal products was a lot more like that, then I think we'd be in better shape nutritionally.
Absolutely, man. It's all about local food, and I think that food is one thing that brings communities together as well. And in an age where we're all online all the time and everything like that, and lacking in that kind of personal connection, I think if you get a something where you get people together and have a meal together, like that's a really great way to building that community. And
absolutely.
And yeah, you did that out at the event, and that was such a cool thing. Getting to see how you smoked the pigs, and that was some of the best pig I've had, man.
Okay, good, man. That's fantastic. I'm glad you liked it. Yeah, that is something I've noticed. Is that this kind of old school agriculture stuff? Yeah, I mean, I think it does build community. I think Anthony Bourdain was onto something like that. I mean, obviously he had a number of foibles and a very interesting life, which is why it made for excellent entertainment and television. Maybe you wouldn't want to be married to him, but it made for great TV. But I think he was onto something that, food is something that has connected people for thousands of years, basically everywhere, every when. And I think that it's also a really good thing, because a lot of this like soil microbiome stuff that I'm talking about, this is part of why champagne has to come from Champagne. This is why Parmesan has to come from Parmesan. Now, maybe you can get decent knockoffs if you can find like bioregions that are similar other places around the world. Like in Washington, I think they've got a fairly decent whiskey situation happening, because it's cold and gray and cloudy and drizzly, just like Scotland. And so they get similar results. But that's also another point, is that like a lot of what I'm saying here, I'm talking about microbiomes and mass spectrometry. Like, yes, we should. I'm a nerdy guy, right? Like, and your nerds should be able to go that deep with it. And then they should also know when to tap out and say, and then beyond this point, here there be dragons. And rather than saying, oh, no, I know everything that's going on, I promise. But the doing of it doesn't require that much, right? This is, at the end of the day, yeah, I can say I'm doing regenerative ag and all this fancy permaculture, blah, blah, blah. This is granddad farming, right? This is the way that people farmed for thousands of years. Like the thing with the fermented feed. It's really not that complicated to do. What builds good soil microbiome? Well, if you want to, you can mess around with, compost tea and stuff. And like they did on a Little Big Farm or whatever, the movie they had on the Netflix, right? And you can do that. I don't do that. I'm not that big. And my soil's not that messed up. I had like some hay pastures that I bought, and then I needed to sow them with dwarf Essex rape and 20 other species, purple top turnips and daikon radish and all sorts of like little treasures for my pigs to go dig for. But that was, I didn't do compost tea where you have to brew it with like pressure and it knocks the soil microbiome off of the soil particles and it agitates it and you fill it with molasses so they've got stuff to eat and blah, blah, blah. There's scientists who do that. They're very good at it. If you've got like a bunch of like dirt that you want to turn into soil, I think Dr. Elaine Ingham did that for the George W. Bush presidential library. The place where they had it was just, it wasn't soil, it was dirt. And it's Texas prairie now, so it's I mean, I'm from Tennessee, man. I'm gonna dunk on Texas when I can. But like I think Tennessee's prettier. We have a lot more water. But the thing is that they did have plants. They now have plants there that are designed to live in the area, and they start with compost tea because they're doing a big project and it's a big deal. If you're homesteading, you don't need to do that. I'm impatient. I went a little further. I went with compost extracts that I would like take my foreman built me a contraption out of an IBC tank and a PVC pipe that he drilled holes in the finest redneck engineering. And we just drove it around and dripped out compost extract, which is just, you take the compost, you get like a gym bag with the kind you put dodgeballs in. Is there nylon on it? Yes. Are there going to be volatile organic compounds in it? Yes. Guess what? You've got a bunch of bacteria. They're going to gobble them up. You don't need to worry about it that much. You dunk it in the bottom in your IBC tank, and then you just dribble whatever you got. All your little beasties everywhere.
All over the place.
Yeah. And what are you doing? What was the thing that was the real big deal? That was composting. Right? Why did I do that? Well, because my soils were acidic and I wanted to change the pH, but I didn't want to put lime out every 2 weeks. I wanted to change the biology, because if you do it chemically, it's going to go back, because it'll go back to the baseline of whatever the biology is doing. And in fact, if you remember from like a Boy Scout handbook or like Ecology 101 or whatever, you start with a meadow, and then you get bushes and scrubland, and then it goes through, and you got deciduous forest, and finally it ends up as coniferous forest, right? As that's happening, the soil pH is changing the entire time. And that's a gradual transition from a bacterial dominant soil microbiome to a fungal dominant soil microbiome.
Oh.
And yeah, and so that's what's happening, because anything you see that's changing above the ground, now that we know how this works, it makes sense that stuff will be changing below the ground too, right? So if you have a thing where you want to remedy soil or whatever, like I want to be able to plant fruit and nut trees in my pasture so I can graze the pigs in between them and they can be eating the apple drops and the pecans and everything. That's the big long-term picture. So I'm messing with it like that. You don't have to. If you're willing to wait, what do you have to do? We'll just put the animals on it, right?
Let them do the work. Yeah.
Let them do the work for you, man. And then, you put the cows on first, then you do the pigs, and then afterwards the chickens come through and they scratch through the manure and they spread it. They spread all the microbiome everywhere, man. And then your pigs come through and they root it up and they mix it up and it goes even further. Then your cows come and they graze it and the roots go down and it carries it further. And if you let it work, it'll happen just letting nature take its course. You only have to get complicated and nerdy with it if you want to press fast forward. That's it. So this is actually, these principles are stuff that's very accessible for people. I want to say, like, Alan's a really smart guy and really nerdy guy, and I'm nerdy enough I could follow him. I'm not as nerdy as he is. Certainly not. I'm not the same flavor. I'm more of a humanities guy. Like I said, I'm not an expert farmer. I'm an expert in education, but I can maybe teach some people some stuff about farming, and help them get there. But yeah, a lot of this stuff I would say don't. If folks are hearing me talk, like, man, that James Patton guy, he's got a bunch of encyclopedias behind him, and like, yeah, I do unironically have hard copy encyclopedias in my library. I'm the right age for that. But yeah, I want to reiterate, this is granddad farming, and this granddad farming, like, this is also why if you have friends that go to, they're gluten intolerant, right? They're gluten sensitive, right? Do you have anybody, Greg, that fits this description? This is a story I've heard a lot of people have. Well, they'll go to Europe, they'll spend like 3 months there or whatever. They'll eat all the baguettes in France, and they'll eat all the pasta in Italy, and lose 15 pounds, and have zero problems with the gluten. Do you know anybody that fits that description?
Yeah, man. And it's the agricultural practices, from what I understand, in the United States, where they spray everything with the herbicides and the pesticides, and that all, like you said, gets bioaccumulated into the food. And then when you eat it, that stuff is fundamentally antibiotic, and so it's going to mess up your gut microbiome and everything, and it's going to throw your immune system all out of kilter.
So a couple things on that. My understanding, and I don't like, I've made it very clear, I'm not an expert on this.
Yeah,
But
me either.
my understanding, but it segues into something you haven't heard me talk about yet, which is bioremediation. So remind me that we're going to come back to that. But my understanding is that the thing that kills the microbiome is less the chemicals, but more the tilling. And because when you till the earth, it turns it over and you get UV on everything and it kills all the bacteria, right?
Yeah, all those good soil microorganisms.
Yeah, like how many mushrooms grow in full sun, man? Like, it's right, nothing, right? So no bacteria. Either kills your fungi, kills your bacteria, and the sun is no good. And what's I've heard is that the trend, even among chemical based industrialized farmers, they're moving to no-till methods because the erosion has gotten out of control.
Yeah.
Because all these little beasties, I didn't even talk about this, but like this is where soil structure comes from.
Yeah, it's actually helping hold the soil together. Yeah.
The bacteria glue themselves to the sand and the silt particles, and then the fungal hyphae run through and connect those larger gloves, and then the plant roots are the bigger infrastructure. And so all the way down, multiple levels of holding the soil together. That's part of what makes that happen. And so what's been happening is, there used to be in Iowa, and like those Midwest places that are now just like, Corn Central or whatever. You used to be able to go through, they like cut through a mountain or a hill to put like a bridge or a tunnel. You would have really rich topsoil for just yards and yards and yards and yards. And now they don't have that anymore, right? That's all that like Dust Bowl stuff, right? They got that great song that it's probably older than them, but the version I remember is from Alison Krauss and Union Station, Dust Bowl Children. I don't know if you've ever heard it. Everybody look that up. It's great on YouTube. It's strip mines and one crop farming, drained to the green earth dry. Yeah, we lost it all and only love was left, and there's only one thing money can't buy. We're all Dust Bowl children. And it's a sad, moving song about the Dust Bowl. And what it came from just abusing the land by doing one crop farming, right?
Yeah.
So it's the tilling, I think, that's the issue. Now, if you nuke a plot of land with glyphosate every year, I'm sure it can't be good for the soil microbiome. But one of the things is that life is not all these different trophic layers. They're not passive. Sometimes your MVP, the thing that's going to break down glyphosate or something, or a volatile organic compound, a VOC, right? Anything like that, is going to be like a bacterium that lives in the digestive tract of a worm, which is an anaerobic place. And actually this healthy soil microbiome, that's usually their aerobic bacteria, right? If your compost pile, you'll go and you'll find on the internet, you'll find I'm thinking like forum messages, like we're still on AOL or something because I'm 42. It's hilarious. Now, but you'll find people talking about, I had a compost. Facebook, I guess, is still kind of a thing for people. I did a compost pile and I spread it on my garden and it killed everything. It's like, well, did you have a compost pile or was it like a cesspit?
Right.
Did you turn it? Was there oxygen in it? Were these aerobic bacteria? Or when you dug into it, did it smell like sewage? Because that's anaerobic bacteria, and that's not the same thing.
Yep.
But if you have life in your soil, then you have an environment where you have aerobic bacteria that live in the soil, and you have anaerobic bacteria that live inside the worms and the nematodes and the microarthropods. And so whatever the right tool for the job is, like when I was doing some research on DDT, because everybody talks about it, the DDT decomposes and gets broken down into stuff that like is also not great. And there needs to be other stuff. So maybe like one level of decomposition is handled by the aerobic bacteria, and the next level is handled by the anaerobic bacteria. The way that you deal with all of this is you throw as much life at it as you possibly can. And you have as much healthy soil microbiome with fungus and bacteria and microarthropods and everything. And that can actually get rid of some of this gnarly stuff that we don't like having around. The endocrine disruptors and the runoff from birth control pills and the sewage, or like whatever horror story you want to talk about. these things do break down in nature, just usually kind of slowly. And then the question is, okay, how much nature are we throwing at this problem actually? How many independent cellular organisms or multicellular, how many organisms are dealing with this chemical? And the more of them you have between the chemical and you, the better chance you have that it's not going to mess with you, if that makes sense.
Yeah, man, it's totally fascinating because Alan was talking about methods for doing the bioremediation stuff with like biochar and then inoculating it with different microorganisms through various methods, and then spreading that all around, and then just like you're saying, allowing those microorganisms to do what they do, to clean up the environment.
Yeah, and you can do that if you have if you want to be a scientist and go at it and engineer your stuff and be like permaculture genius, you can. But I think what I would tell people is that there's only going to ever be so many permaculture geniuses in the world, and I think what's happening now is there's a lot, and we need them. We need Al. That's not throwing any shade on Alan. Alan's great, and he's actually thinking on a scale that few people I think are thinking on, where he's like, well, we need to still have cities. And I'm like, yes, we do. Oh my God, this is a huge problem. And we need people thinking about how to do that. But I do think also it's sort of the thing where, and I think he'd be very much agreeing on this, is that there, you can't replace, there's no amount of permaculture geniuses that you can come up with or generate that could replace the force of a culture normalizing granddad farming for themselves.
Yes, it has to happen on an individual level, and people need to start understanding why this is important and why your food is so important, and start taking this challenge up on an individual level. I completely agree.
And there's reasons to do this that are culinary. You don't just have to be like crusading all the time. This is what all that DOC stuff in the old world is about, with champagne coming from Champagne and Parmesan coming from Parmesan. We've been
that uniqueness to each bioregion. Yeah.
So this idea, the term in wine is called terroir, and a couple of like the more influential Meishan breeders in the association, Jonathan Kimmer is one of them. Rebecca Thompson is another. They have backgrounds in the wine industry, and terroir is what makes Bordeaux, or Champagne is Champagne. We were thinking about it in terms of the Meishan, because you've got fat in the meat, and the fat is going to be made differently depending on what the pigs are eating. Rebecca's pigs are eating blackberry bushes out there. She's out in Rainier, Oregon. And so they're eating blackberry bushes and stuff in that temperate rainforest, and you can taste the meat is different. And we're still figuring out. It's a very new thing. We've only had the AMBA since 2016. But like, it can be fun, guys. It can be delicious. Conservation can be fun, and it can be delicious, and it can be very, very low tech. And in fact, we as a species have a very deep tradition of this, and this is the way of excellent stewardship, and it is, I'm here to tell you, very, very delicious. Actually, hey, that's a good segue to that last picture, or the color picture. We showed it once before.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. There's the wages of grazing. Okay, so when you look at the food, right, the food that looks good is usually something you think is going to taste good. Now, the one exception to this, and so there is a reason for that I'm going to get into. But an exception to this would be up in that top left there. Those are red, delicious apples, which most people know are very red, but not very delicious. Interestingly enough, the red delicious apples are some of the most nutritious apples you can eat. And you're like, well, how does that make any sense? Well, all the nutrition's in the skin. It's all in the thing that makes it look appealing. It's that whore's lipstick red apple skin that's like, it looks like it's from Snow White or something, right?
Yeah.
That stuff is where that red correlates to nutrients that you're looking for. If you look over at the carrots on the other side, carrots didn't used to be orange, right? They used to be all different colors, and the different colors, you know, the oranges is going to be more correlated with like different types of carotenes. The purples are going to be more correlated with anthocyanins, things like that. But they look cool, right? And when we used to do modification of organisms with selective breeding, like through old school practices, right? What we would end up doing is we'd go for things that were fun or like delicious, right? And we would make, and you can look and you can see, like, you know, watermelons used to not have a lot of meat that was worth eating in them, and I think bananas used to, they're all one type of, there's like lots of different species of bananas, but even then, like plantains are completely different. They're, you know, starchy and savory and so on and so forth. And so a lot of folks will say, like, you know, oh, well, GMOs, we've been doing GMOs for hundreds of years. I'm like, oh, okay, guys, like sort of, like sort of, like this GMO, for first of all, this is selective breeding, not like gene editing. They're very different things. So
Yeah,
that's
right.
some BS there, first of all. Secondly, what's the brass ring we're looking for here? We're looking for things that are color, that are culinary. Like, I'm going to breed orange carrots because I'm Dutch and I'm patriotic and orange is cool. Like, okay, great, fine. That's at least something, right? It's not the same thing as like, I need a shorter growing season for shareholder return, or I need glyphosate resistance because I'll save more money because I won't have to worry about weeds or anything like that. And so, yeah, the thing I want us to know is that this way of doing things is not just, it's not just that it's, you know, high-minded, but it's also delicious. And the things that are delicious are also nutritious. The red meat looks good to eat because it's had a longer lifespan, actually. The pork, that's the white meat pork stuff, it hasn't been on pasture. It hasn't had any. Red meat is actually usually caused by postbiotics. My meat is actually, so this is actually Laura Jensen's on the left and Rebecca Thompson's on the right. My pork is actually not quite as red because I feed the fish meal. And that's a direct, it's not a postbiotic. That's just raw, straight protein. And then the milk is probably also just straight protein, the way that the soy would be, except I'm not feeding soy. so my meat is pink, but it's paler than this sometimes. The stuff that makes it real, that makes red meat red, is that postbiotic, those postbiotic compounds from having the multiple stomachs usually, or in the case of the Meishan, the hindgut fermentation. I don't eat horse because I raised horses. I'll never eat a horse. That's just my squeamish, like, I'm going to be particular, and like I'm a vegan when it comes to horses, right? Sure. Like I'll cop to that. But horse meat's red. And it's because they got the hindgut fermentation. You've got those postbiotics. It's more readily translatable into myoglobin. And so, but what that also makes for is it makes for more omega-3s and fewer omega-6s. And so the nutritional profile from the things that we like to eat, it's there for reasons. If you like to eat something for reasons other than sugar, fat, and salt, you know, which is your junk food holy trinity, that, you know, these were scarce things. You know, if you're going to be a paleo bro or whatever, like, you know, you don't have a lot of sugar, fat, or salt, right? You got to go on an animal to get fat, right? Sugar, I mean, okay, you got to find beehive. You know, salt, good luck, right? Like, and you're looking probably to get it from animals. And so, but anything that isn't those three, that's usually correlated to some sort of a nutritional thing. And I think that food that comes from whole ecosystems isn't just more nutritious. I think it's more delicious by far.
Yeah, and was it Hippocrates that said, "Let food be thy medicine"? You know?
Yeah. That sounds about right. It should be a better classicist than that, but I was more of a Roman Empire guy. But that sounds familiar. I'll ask my bro who's better at my classics bro who's better at Greek than me.
But, you know, if you have all these good inputs and you are giving yourself the highest quality food, that you should be able to stay away from the doctor's office. So,
yep. It's ounces of prevention definitely worth pounds of cure. I'm married to a surgeon, and she will tell you surgery is way better than the alternative. But if you can avoid it, please do. She'll say, when God made you, He made you, and you were perfect, right? Okay, I'm not God. This isn't going to end. Well, you work in prosthetics. It's good that you have prosthetics, but yeah, I mean, it's not going to be as good as the original
Real
article.
deal.
Yep. Real deal. Yep. So, at any rate, all right. Do you have other questions you wanted to ask me? I know we're coming up on time, but like, was there look through your question list? You had some good stuff. I've been rambling.
Well, I mean, if maybe we could cover this last question here, and then we could wrap it up.
Sure.
So yeah, man, I just getting to chat with you.
Yeah.
At that event, it was so much fun because get into all this.
Yeah.
Get into the weeds with some stuff, but you also mentioned some stuff to me about like mindset and philosophy.
Sure.
And I thought that was really interesting. I was wondering, like, how has some of the philosophy affected you? Specifically, we were talking kind of about the samurai, and
sure.
How has that affected you and like what you're doing right now?
So right. I came up with a lot of this stuff as I was doing education consulting. And a lot of these old school things, just like we were talking about, like, champagne coming from Champagne, or the different, cheeses coming from different places with where the microbiomes, like the cultures thrive, right, in that particular microclimate, right? I started learning about a lot of the stuff for how I relate to humans from education. And a lot of it's older, right? And a lot of the old stuff I was telling you earlier, a lot of the old stuff has since been shorn up by modern science. So I think I told you that neuroscience has fairly recently caught up with Miyamoto Musashi's Book of the Five Rings, and how they would assert they would get space between their body and their mind. The thing that I would say, if folks, so for a farming, a regenerative agriculture thing, I don't know that the Bushido's directly applicable. The Taoism's pretty applicable. I would say the Tao Te Ching has some good lessons for a farmer, because, really, what Alan was saying, to break down some of the system stuff down, a lot of this is really just Genesis 3 stuff. It's I'm in Tennessee, you're in Alabama, we're in the Bible Belt, and my good friends in New York and Seattle like to look down their nose. But a lot of this stuff about the tree of knowledge of good and evil versus the tree of life, that knowledge of good and evil, that's actually gnosis, right? That's this certain knowledge that I'm sure that I know what's good. I'm sure that I know what's evil, right? And because of that, it's okay that I have a centrally planned whatever. And this isn't even about liberal or conservative, because like communists and fascists are both centrally planned, right? And when you've got something centrally planned, what Alan was trying to say is really, you're only as good as you can be until somebody has a human mistake. And then you're back to Mao burning all the books. And, there used to be a large breed of Meishan. There was a large, medium, and small. We raise mediums because the large is extinct. Okay. And so I would say, a lot of what Alan was saying about like centrally planned stuff failing is this stuff that comes from choosing to live, which means go out, get your hands dirty, go out, bottom up, decentralized. What's your land? Sure, Champagne grows in Champagne. What grows in your backyard? What's your terroir like? Go find that out. Go figure it out. Right. That's the right path for that. So I would say, don't necessarily sleep on theology. And if we're down here and, there's a lot of folks that they get closer to the land, then they get more, they wax more philosophical, they wax more theological. I think the humility inherent in this of saying, no, I don't know for sure what's right. I don't know for sure what's wrong. I'm going to try to be less wrong. I'm going to keep my brain in gear. I'm going to use reason, but at a certain point, my reason's going to fail, and I got to go with faith. I've got to say, all right, as a general rule, I've got acidic soil. I want it to become more alkaline. That means I need more fungal dominant microbiome. Which fungi? I don't know. I'm going to grab fungal food in my compost, and I'm going to cook it extra long. It's going to be more browns than greens, and then we're going to spread it on the field, and we're going to see what happens. And there's that leap of faith there with reason as well, working in tandem. And the thing that's cancer for it is gnosis. It's when you think, well, I'm surely going to do that. Well, then you can mess things up, right? I have found also, if folks are interested in this, especially if you're looking into interrogating your own human fallibility, if you're working with farmhands or you're working with your family or whatever, behavioral economics is a really good discipline for this. So, and look, dude, we live in the future, Craig. Okay, like people can get an audiobook of Freakonomics real easy. Highly recommend Freakonomics by Stephen Levitt and Stephen Dubner. The sequel books, Super Freakonomics and stuff, are also pretty good. One of the biggest ones, though, that's more of like just sort of like a micro econ thing. One of the ones that sort of helps the most in terms of like making decisions, making sure you don't get high on your own supply. I mean, you still will, but like it isn't like this thing where we do get high on our own supply and we lose track of our humility and we like to pretend we know more than we do. I mean, that's it's not that, that isn't it's not for no reason that isn't what people call the foundation of original sin. This is a thing that affects us all, right? But something that can help us map it out a little bit, keep a little bit better track of it is this behavioral economics stuff. I like Dan Ariely, Predictably Irrational by Dan Ariely. And he's got a couple sequels that are worthwhile as well. That is really cool stuff for understanding how to hack your brain. And then Nudge by Cass Sunstein and Richard Thaler. It's about choice architecture. And so that's more for like how advertising is maybe affecting you. How choices get presented to you. Because like if you're going to be homesteading, if you're going to be farming, if you want to be self-reliant, you got to make a bunch of choices. And like all three of these things, the micro econ, the behavioral econ, the choice architecture, these are all things that nerds that are in charge of corporations are using on you, right? It's sort of it's sort of the foundational science of like marketing, right? It's sort of like if marketing is medicine, then this is your basic chemistry and biology that undergirds it. And so I think understanding that is a good way of understanding sort of, all right, what's happening? Am I into this because it's a really good choice for me and my land and my animals? Or am I really into this because somebody sold me on it? And I'm really excited for this reason that, used to be more evolutionarily adaptive. And now that I've watching stuff on YouTube, it's less so, right? Because all the algorithms are coded with this stuff in mind, and all of the marketing decisions are coded with this stuff in mind. So I would say, yeah, Freakonomics, Predictably Irrational, Nudge. I would start with that, and then failing that, don't neglect theology, because they're just different maps for the same territory. People have treated dealing with life and death, which, I mean, if you've got a homestead, you've got life and death, and it is, they treat this stuff as sacred for reasons. Right. It's something as humble as a grub bin. So I've got black soldier fly larvae, which are also something that I think everybody who's got a homestead or just wants to take their chicken feed bill and reduce it. I mean, we're talking about a species that can upcycle any biomass from leftover Mexican food to roadkill armadillos into high protein, high fat chicken feed. And that is a hell of a miracle. And so for me, you know, look, if I've got a sow that farrows 19 piglets, the chances that all of them are alive are very low. It's still an infant mortality rate that dunks on our species for most until about 100 years ago. But like, I usually end up with a couple stillborn piglets. And my sow worked really hard to make this piglet, and it's really sad. You know, you get used to it as you're dealing with, you know, your barnyard tragedies here and there. You'll lose a chicken to a fox or whatever. But when I've got that stillborn piglet, when I know my sow worked really hard to make proteins and fats and, like, you know, most of an animal, I feel a lot better taking that and just digging a furrow in the coffee grounds of my grub bin and putting it in and covering it back up. And in 3 days, my black soldier fly larvae have eaten it all. And it's going to go back into the circle of life, Simba. And it's going to close the circle. And this thing that's a sad thing and an ugly thing becomes sort of a beautiful thing for what it is. And in moments like that, yeah, it's at the very least philosophical, bordering on theological. And I wouldn't sneer at it. I would encourage people not to sneer at it. It's just a different sort of map. And it's honestly the kind of map that is less likely to make you high on your own supply, which is, you know, less likely to be somebody that Alan Booker is like, yeah, well, they've already lost. They don't even really, they just haven't figured it out yet. And so, yeah, I would say look into that stuff, and yeah, and I would read the Tao Te Ching as well. It's very interesting stuff. Very, very good stuff about, like, living in harmony with nature. If that's something that you haven't checked out and you want something to go with, I would check out the Tao Te Ching. The Bushido's good, but that's more like person to person stuff, and mastering your feelings, mastering your emotions. But for farming, I would say I would go with the Tao. I would go with the Bible, and I'd go with the microecon, the behavioral econ stuff.
Excellent. Well, James, man, it's been a real pleasure getting to talk to you, brother, and really appreciate your time and grateful for your time. Where can people follow, support, and check out your farm?
So, yeah, I would go to magnumopusastates.com, MAGNUMOPUS estates.com. That's my farm's website. I've got social media. It's on there somewhere. I don't do enough with social media. Go to my website. That'll be cool. And yeah, you can get in touch with me there. Send me an email.
Well, excellent, James. Thank you so much. Guys, if you got value out of this, please share it, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment on the video to let us know about what you thought. So thank you, everybody, and we'll catch you on the next episode. Thank you so much, James.
Thanks, Greg.